Joey Kramer's Renegade.
Can you show me the outtakes?
Okay.
Ooh, it's nothing like the internet.
Hey guys, how you doing? I hope everyone is having an awesome day. So today I want to talk about Renegade. Renegade is a band that Joey Kramer put together in 1981, a year that Aerosmith was having a difficult time. Steven got injured and nothing was happening for Aerosmith, so he was just getting bored and anxious to get out on the road or just start doing music. So he put together this kind of super group where it was Joey on drums, Tom on bass, Jimmy Crespo on guitar, Marge Raymond on vocals. She's a female vocalist, very powerful vocals she has. But if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the Aerosmith videos I post. Right now I'm covering all the main outtakes, but I'll be covering other fascinating rare topics from the band's history and their music. So like and subscribe right now to make sure you don't miss any. So while this band has always been kind of a myth and a mystery, because everyone has been wondering for the longest time if it even really existed, because there's only just a couple of references in a couple of autobiographies by Aerosmith. Luckily, throughout the years, we've gotten a little bit more of information throughout books, comments, interviews, and especially interviews actually recently. So it's very interesting because, first of all, back in 2012, we got an interview from Eddie Trunk's show. For some reason, Eddie Trunk is really interested in this part of the band's history. You know, the alternate lineup of the band, the one with Jimmy Crespo and Rick Dufay. So he was asking Joey about this era, and well, Joey started talking a little bit more about Renegade, what happened with it, why it didn't work. And when it happened. So let's take a listen at this segment.
It was the result of me finally getting to the point where I didn't want to do what I was doing anymore, and I went and put something else together and started doing basic tracks for another band called Renegade, and that was with Jimmy and
Jimmy Crespo?
Jimmy Crespo.
So wait, around the time of Rockin' a Hard Place, you were looking to do another band?
Mm-hmm.
Even while Jimmy would have been in two bands, or you guys were both going to leave Aerosmith?
Well, we were doing it. We were both in Aerosmith, but we were doing it at a time when nothing was going on. It was it wasn't vacation, and it was just a time when nothing was happening because we couldn't get shit together.
Right.
And so I recruited Marge Raymond, who was singing. Jimmy was in a band with Marge called Flame. And I think they were from Brooklyn, and Bobby Mayo was playing with us, and Tom was playing bass, and we got to the point of putting down basic tracks for a record, of which I still have, and then Steven started getting his shit together and decided that it was time to do another Aerosmith record, so that got put on the back burner. And we went and did Rockin' a Hard Place, and we started it with Tony Bon Jovi because Tony was doing the other record, and eventually it got to a point where he couldn't work with us anymore, and Jack came back in, God bless him, and it never got finished, and then we did Rockin' a Hard Place.
So there you go. And what I think is really interesting here is that Joey mentions that he still has the recordings, the studio tracks that they were doing for Renegade. And I'll come back to this later. Anyways, what's interesting is that after this interview, Joey contacted Jimmy Crespo, and after a couple of months, Jimmy Crespo was actually again interviewed in the Eddie Trunk show. And they talked a little bit more about the history of Renegade. So here you go, take a listen.
Joey Kramer, he called Marge Raymond, who was in that Renegade cake that we put together with Joey Kramer.
Right, because you were going to do a band. I think Joey told me this when he was here on this radio show, that you and him were working on a band on the side while you were both still in Aerosmith, right?
Exactly. Because Stevie was in the hospital, and there was a scene, and Joey was, he had enough, wanted to get something going. And I said, wow, that sounds good. Let's get going. I got plenty of material, blah, blah, blah. And we put this thing called Renegade together. Tom Hamilton was in it, Bobby Mayo, God rest his soul. Marge Raymond was doing vocals, and drums. It was really, really good.
Did it ever come out?
No, never got past square one. I don't know, but the rumor says that Stephen got pissed off about it, and he started to start writing.
Did you record with this band, or did you make a record?
We recorded about 4 or 5 tracks, and Tony Bon Jovi actually had produced, I think, most of it, as a matter of fact. And we never got a deal. Never went that far. But if we had the opportunity, we would have continued. You know, it was really a great band, a lot of potential. But then Stephen called, and we were back on the, you know, he was back on the saddle, so to say, you know.
Right.
And he started writing for real.
And then finally, we have another interview with Marge Raymond. She was the lead vocalist for Renegade, and she got interviewed in a podcast, and a couple of podcasts actually, and she was talking about her career, and she also comments on what happened to the band, and most interestingly, she leaked a couple of the demos that were recorded by Renegade. So that's what we're listening to in the background here. So let's listen to what Marge has to say about Renegade.
Joe Perry left Aerosmith.
Okay.
Then Jimmy was asked, like I said, that's the reason why Kix was opening the act, because Jimmy was now the lead guitarist for Aerosmith.
Okay.
Stephen got into a car accident and he wrecked his ankle or his leg. So he was laid up in Sunapee, New Hampshire.
Oh.
The band was getting very itchy. They wanted to play. So Joey Kramer said, I'm tired of doing nothing. Let's form a band. While Stephen was recuperating.
Renegade.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Renegade was formed. We went to SIR, which is a big sound stage and rehearsal hall. And Joey Kramer put it together, and we brought in Bob Mayo. Bob Mayo was also the keyboard player for Peter Frampton.
Oh.
So it was Tom Hamilton on bass, Joey Kramer on drums, Jimmy Crespo on lead guitar, myself, Marge Raymond on lead vocals, and Bob Mayo on keyboards. And that was Renegade. We did an album. Actually, what you're going to hear
You had a record deal with Renegade.
Just about. And then Stephen heard that the band was ready to sign and, record. And he says, I'm taking back my band.
Wait a second. Wait. Okay. So he was laid up. He was scared.
He was scared.
He was scared that Marge Raymond and Renegade were going to...
It was going to take off. Every Aerosmith biography has Renegade written about it.
Oh, my... What do they say?
That
story.
Joey formed Renegade, and that Marge Raymond came in to be the lead vocalist, and it was short-lived.
So what happened?
Short-lived meaning about a year.
Right. What happened when What happened when he came back?
He said, sorry, Marge, I got to take my band back. And he owed CBS contractually owed them 2 albums. So he just said, I got to come back and contractually fulfill my obligation. Bye.
So what did the label say to you? What did the label say to you?
I wasn't signed to a label yet.
Okay.
We were tracking.
It was coming right.
We had, what you're going to hear is the demo. We had already started tracking at the power station with Tony Bon Jovi. And so all of that had to stop. So we had 5 songs already tracked, and then right in the middle of the album being recorded, it had to stop. It was done
Marge,
live.
I just want the listeners to know, obviously it was very upsetting. What did you do after that? Because that's on the cusp of
oh my God,
worldwide superstardom.
It was. I just went, just reinvented myself again and continued to pick up other things to do.
So I thought that it was really great to be able to find these really rare pieces of the interviews from different points of view, explaining a little bit more about the history of Renegade and what happened with it, and a little bit of more info behind the songs that they recorded. So when I posted these demos that Marge leaked online, on YouTube, she started actually commenting and answering fan questions in the comment section below. So what I did is gather her comments and the parts that are more relevant to the Aerosmith fans. I've basically reordered them a little bit. Maybe I edited a couple of things, but in general, this is her words, just giving further information about the history, songwriting process, and details about Renegade and what happened with it.
And Google is reading it for us.
Hello dear fans, Marge Raymond here, the lead vocalist of Renegade. I'm assuming this track was lifted from a podcast. I leaked them. I figured it's time for the fans to hear what never got released. This would have been a monster album. I wanted everybody to know we're not a myth and we were a real live band. A supergroup in today's terms. I have 6 songs from Renegade, including One More Night and Do It Again. Do It Again sounds like an Aerosmith tune, only thing is, I'm a female with a huge voice. One More Night is one of my favorite power ballads. I released a couple of these tunes on a podcast a couple years ago. It originally was recorded for Flame's 3rd album. When we recorded One More Night with Renegade, I did all the background vocals. It was an overdub. I have recorded that tune with 4 different bands. It's phenomenal ballad. Unfortunately, we don't have a music industry anymore. The rest of the tunes are right here in my house. The other tunes that Renegade recorded are All Night Long, Badlands, and Cinderella Dreamer, which would have been a big hit for radio back in the 80s. I sing that tune with my lighter voice, not my big belting voice. This is a 2-track demo recorded completely live. We wanted to do what the Beatles did. 4 tracks bounced down to 2. This is a total live performance. Jimmy Crespo and I were in a band called Flame. We recorded 2 albums and the beginning of a 3rd album on RCA. Jimmy Iovine was the producer. We disbanded Flame and shopped ourselves to Lieber Krebs Management. They were the largest and biggest management company. They had everybody signed to them, including Aerosmith, AC/DC, Ted Nugent, The Scorpions, Michael Bolton, Mahogany Rush, Balance, Def Leppard, a lot of bands. The management loved Jimmy and I, and we were going to form a band around us being the front line. The rest is history. Aerosmith was auditioning guitarists when Joe Perry left. Jimmy got the gig. I then joined a band called Kicks and became the opening act for Aerosmith. Steven and the rest of the band saw me one night when I opened their show. Usually they would come in after I opened. I saw them in the wings watching me. They were awestruck. I'm not kidding. Steven wanted me to come back out and sing backing vocals on Lick and a Promise, Come Together, and Train Kept a Rolling. I also played tambourine. The band I was with was Kicks. Raceway was the tune I opened with for Aerosmith. Let me tell you, it's not easy to open for Aerosmith, especially when we never got billing. Who the hell is this band? We want Aerosmith. Well, once we started with Raceway, I commanded the stage and the audience was screaming for more. That's why Joey asked me to be the lead vocalist when he created Renegade. He knew what I could do. What you are listening to all live demos that we recorded. It was never released because contractually Aerosmith still owed their label 2 albums. Steven was up in Sunapee, New Hampshire, kind of recovering from an accident, heard that Renegade was about to be signed to Columbia, Sony. We showcased the band and were about to be signed. We even started tracking for the album at the power station in NYC. Then Steven took his band back and the rest is history. Renegade, one of the greatest supergroups ever that never had a chance to perform live. Well, we did it, sir, and to major recording labels, but never to the general public. Years later, in 2012, when Joey was on Eddie Trunk's show, Eddie asked Joey about Jimmy. Joey said they were going to Vegas to do a show. I called up Jimmy and gave him Joey's number so that they could meet. Renegade's master tapes are gone, lost, who knows what happened to them. Joey Kramer has nothing of them either. I only have cassettes. Fortunately, I have musician friends who own great studios. One of them was kind enough to let me transfer the muddy cassettes to MP3. You need an engineer for that. He did me a favor by letting me use his studio and engineer for free. We need an investor. There is no market for selling CDs anymore. Everyone streams and downloads for free. Jimmy Crespo wrote the tunes, owns the tunes, copyrights and publishing. If the song were ever to be published, it would be his call. But we never signed with a record label, and he just came out of the hospital, not sure what he would do. If anyone wants to invest in Renegade, here I am.
So there you go, guys. Today we have more information about Renegade than ever before. I think it's really amazing piece of history. And what's been on my mind ever since is that, well, back in the 80s, the recording industry worked, the music industry worked in a whole different way. But for today's world, I mean, these songs are already recorded. So what I'm thinking is, why don't they just grab those songs, those demos, and put them in the internet? Just sell them as a digital release. They might not be the biggest hits in the world. They might not be that popular anymore, perhaps, but they are going to be making revenue through streaming, through digital platforms. So just get them out there, release them. So I don't know about you, but I would love to have this happen. So maybe we should start a petition online to get the attention from Marge, from Jimmy, and from Joey to get this release. Hashtag release Renegade. We can do it through social media. Let's contact everyone. I'm pretty sure that we can get at least a couple of these songs finally released on streaming service. And it's gonna be good for the career of Jimmy and Marge and everyone involved in Renegade. Interesting to notice that Marge says that she doesn't have any of the tracks that they were recording in the studio, that Jimmy probably doesn't have any, and that even Joey doesn't have it. But I think that's really strange, since Joey was kind of the mastermind behind Renegade. And Joey saying that he does have it, you know? So, I mean, what does Joey has? Just the live tracks that they were demoing, or the actual tracks that they were doing instrument by instrument in the real studio with Tony Bon Jovi? I guess that's a question for another day.
We got to the point of putting down basic tracks for a record, of which I still have.
So what do you think, guys? Can we make this happen? Did I get anything wrong? Am I missing any bit of information about Renegade? I know it was mentioned in Joey Kramer's book, but it was just a very small comment.
There was less and less going on, but I still needed the steady income. I owned a piece of a rehearsal studio called Top Cat, and I started trying to write, doing production work, anything to try to keep the ball rolling. I even tried to start a band called Renegade. We had Tom and my friend from New York, Bobby Mayo, who had played with Peter Frampton, and Jimmy Crespo and Marge Raymond, who had been the singer in a band called Flame. We did a showcase at SIR and started to cut a record. We lined up a record deal. But then Steven suddenly decided he was ready to do another Aerosmith record. Jimmy and Tom and I all belonged in Aerosmith. So that was that. We dropped Renegade and started back to work.
So comment down below with your thoughts. Do let me know what you think. If you agree with me, did I get anything wrong? And let me know which song, outtake, album, or topic you would like me to cover in my next video. All the sources and links discussed can be found in the video description below. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Stay awesome, and here's to hopefully get the Aerosmith Outtakes release and the Renegade album released officially soon. I'll see you guys next time, and remember...